Hello guys. Welcome to the JP Tech. Uh, in this video, I'm going to explain for those who understand or using a C sharp language first time and start learning C sharp language first time, then they have lots of question about these all keywords that we are using to write a simple hello world program. So today I'm going to explain you each and every keyword, like using, system, namespace, demo, class, hello, why that keyword or why that type we wrote here to just displaying hello world message. So let's start. We talk about that the first keyword, that is using. So in C sharp, that using is just a keyword, because in C sharp keyword denoted those words which are written in a small letter. Complete all words are written in a small letter. Those words is known as keyword in C sharp. So that keyword is using is a same kind of a keyword that is basically used to include any kind of a inbuilt library, because as we know, all program having a inbuilt library, and that library having a existing functionality or features, and that we want to use in our application, so that our application becomes more robust, and multiple features or enhancements should be included. So that we need a third party library in. We will use a inbuilt library, or we will also create your own library to develop such kind of a logic, so that that logic will use multiple places for that purpose. So in that situation, how will we what will be the process to include that library in your program? So that is a using keyword the C# will provide to you to include any of the library that are going to be used in this program. So that purpose they are using writing a using keyword. It's just same as C and C++. As we know, in C++ we are using has include. In C we are using has include, and include the header files. Java language use import. So every language have its own keyword to include that such kind of a library. So C sharp using keyword. That's it. That is the only difference. The second is namespace. Namespace is nothing. It's just a namespace, I can say. So that library, different languages named differently for that in build library, I can say. In C plus we can say a studio.h is a header file. In Java, uh, the library we consider as a package. So is similarly in C sharp, those library we are creating, or those library which is already existing or inbuilt. So that library we consider as a namespace. So that system is a namespace, but that system is not user defined. Uh, we will not create that system. That system is an inbuilt library which is exist in the .NET framework, and that system will provide you the input output related information to you. So that system will only responsible to provide that input output operations, similar like C and C++, because that studio.h or istream.h, it will provide you a input output method like printf. Or in C++, they provide you cout. For input they use cin in C++, or in C language they use scanf. So that such kind of function if you will able to use because of that header file. And similarly, if you use that write line or read line method because of that system. So that is a system is an inbuilt namespace. That's why we will include in the top of the file. But this is not a mandatory things to include. If you don't want to include, you will not forcefully, or it will not required to include using system in the top of the file. Why we are using writing that in the top of the file? Because we don't want to write again and again that system keyword in the while we are calling write line method. So if you are not writing that using system um, uh, on the top of the file, then you should always write system dot console dot write line. Like that you will always write, then you will be able to call that write line method, and then we will able to display some message on the UI, right? So I don't want to repeat that system multiple places, so that's why the CSA will provide you a keyword. So just include those namespace on the top of the file, and then only class and method you can use inside that program. Okay, so this way they will introduce that using keyword, and the namespace is actually I explained you already. The next is a namespace. As we know, the system is an inbuilt namespace. The sysap and the .NET will provide you a feature. You will create your own namespace as well. That keyword will help you to create. So it is a keyword, and this keyword is will help you to create under user defined namespace. So this is the system defined namespace, and this is the user defined namespace. So if you want to create your own namespace, you can create by using this keyword. So here this namespace is a keyword, and that demo is a name of that namespace, like system. System is a namespace, but what is the name of that inbuilt namespace? The name is system. Similar like this is the user defined, demo is a user defined namespace, and we will able to create because of that keyword namespace. So if you include namespace, then you will able to create that name user defined namespace. So similarly, namespace is nothing, is a keyword to create a user defined namespace. Demo is nothing, it's just a name of that namespace. The fourth one is a class. As we know, we are using object oriented programming language. We are developing object oriented programming language, that is C sharp, and C sharp is object oriented programming language, complete object oriented programming language. So we should have to follow the object oriented programming concept. So as the object oriented programming consider, it will provide you and restrict you to create the class first. Without creating a class, you can't create or can't develop any program in C sharp. So that class is mandatory. So that's why the class is nothing, is just a keyword to create your own class. That's it, nothing else. I'm not defining that class in term of object oriented programming language. I am defining that class only purpose why we are using in class in this program only, and what is the purpose, and how we'll create your own class for what keyword. So this is the keyword that will help you to create your own class. Similarly, the hello is nothing, it's just a class name. The public, as we know, in every program, every programming languages, there should be a uh, access modifier, or we can say access specifier. So using that access modifier, or we will restrict uh, and we can decide the scope of that particular functionality. So here in the main method, I implemented the public access modifier. That means we are not going to restrict that method, because that public is basically used to access anywhere. So that kind of a features, or that kind of a scope, we will decide on that main method. That's why we are using public. So similar kind of a accessibility or a scope you can decide using, we can use that access modifier. But in the C sharp, there is a five types of access modifier that I explain in the next step. As you can see, there is a five type of access modifier in the C sharp. The first one is public, the second one is private, the third one is protected, the fourth one is internal, and the fifth one is protected internal. So these five types are available in C sharp. Public, if you define anything using that public keyword, that means you want to there is a accessibility of that functionality outside the class as well. So there is no restrictions. This is a class, inside that class this main is a member of that particular class. So that main or anything, suppose I'm going to define some int a equals to 9. So this is an integer variable. Now we are deciding, okay, now we this int need to be public. So now this int is public, that means this int a is accessible outside the class as well. So there is no any restriction. So that public behave like that. Private, if you declare, it means, if you declare private, that means that int a is accessible only within the class only. The scope is decided here. So outside the class, that int a, we can't use it. So that kind of a scope, if you decide, then you have to use private. Similarly, protected is nothing, just we can use protected member whenever there is some inheritance concept are there. So in object oriented programming, as we know, there is a concept of inheritance where we inherit few class members data to another class. So that kind of a relations are there, then we will use protected member. In a later video, I will explain each and every component in a detailed manner. For now, in the keyboard perspective or uses perspective for in this program, I am explaining that part. Next is the internal. Internal is another access modifier. Is just behave like a public in a same class, but in a when we are creating a library, it's behave totally different. So I will explain more in later videos, but for now internal just like a public, but in case of library it will use in the same library class. So when I will explain you in a later video how to create library and how we can use that library, in that case we will use internal, and I will explain you why that internal is important in that part. Then we will better understand that particular part. Similar protected internal, same it's just similar kind of a feature is like a public and protected. So internal is behave like a public in a same namespace or a same project, but in a library it's behave differently in a similar kind of a thing. If protected internal we will use, so in a they will state that whenever two different libraries, and if that library having a relation in a form of inheritance, then that protected internal member will be used in that derived library class. So that is a simple statement they will provide to regarding that protected internal. The next keyword I'm going to explain, that is static. So this is a very important or uh, a useful keyword in C sharp. So that keyword will help you to uh, initialize any of the component on your language without a requirement of that instance. So if you create any member or any kind of a functionality with a static keyword, that means there is no need of any kind of a object creation for that particular class. So if you create a hello class, and if you need that int a 9 of that particular class hello, then you should have to create the object first, then you will be able to use that 9. But if you declare that int as a static, that means you don't need to create any of the object, directly you can access that a variable with the help of class name. So that kind of a features a static will provide to you. So in a simple statement, more I can say, it is a keyword and it is used to initialize the entry point without creating the instance of a class. So here is the purpose of that static method, is to initialize the entry point. As we know, each and every program has an entry point, or entry point doesn't depends on anything. Okay, because this is a custom class. So compiler will how the compiler will know, okay, there is a custom class hello, or inside that custom class there is an entry point. So compiler will didn't identify. So for that purpose, it will declare that entry point as a static, so that it will automatically initialize, and compiler will automatically detect that entry point and the program will get executed. For that purpose, it will use a the program will use a static keyword in especially in the main method. Next is a void. As we know, void is nothing, it's just a return type. So whenever we didn't return or don't want to return anything from the method, we just use void instead of any other data type. Similarly, main is nothing, is the entry point of any of the programming language. Any of the programming language, it should have one entry point, and entry point always be named with the main. But in the C sharp, the name is same, but there is a syntax is totally different. The m should be capital every time when we declare a main method as an entry point. So that need to be remembered. So main is a entry point of your applications from where the program will start. The second, that parameter is nothing, is just a array of a string. That's it, this is the array, nothing else. Args is the argument name or parameters, this array name. That array name could be anything. It's not necessary always to provide args only. It will be anything, a also, b also, c also, anything. So args is an appropriate name because this is an argument. So in the short form, in the programming language, generally we will use args as a name of that array. But it's nothing, it's just a string type array. Now the next one is the console. So console, as I told you, this is a class, and that class comes from system, and system will provide you a input output operation. So because this is object oriented programming language, and that object oriented programming language having some hierarchy. So there is the one namespace. Inside that namespace there is having a lots of classes. Inside the classes we have lots of members like data types, properties, method. That kind of members need to be there. So there is a namespace. Inside the namespace there is a class. In that the class there is a method write line. So that kind of a process is there. So that console is a nothing, is a class that provide input output method. So input output is, that means this is for input and this is for output. So generally, console will provide you two types of method. The first one is write line. The second one is write. It's totally similar like printf with slash n, or printf without slash n. Slash n, it means we want to display something on the command prompt with line termination. If you use slash n in C languages. But Java and C# will provide a separate language, print and print ln. So whenever we use write line, that means we want to display a line, but after printing that line, the statement need to be terminated, line should be terminated, and it goes to the next line, so that the next statement should be printed. So that kind of a feature, or that kind of a message we want to write on the UI. So in that situation we need to use write line, because every time we need to print a line, and then line need to be terminated. If you don't want to terminate the line, then you have to use write only. So that is only difference between that write or write line method. Similarly, the console will provide for input as well. So there is a three types of input: read line, read, and read key. So whenever we are trying to read a complete line as an input, as a user input, in that situation you have to use read line. Or as we know, this is a method, and method always returns something. Without returning, we can't create a method. So method always returns something. So what are the return type of that read line method? So return type will be always a string. Okay. Next is read. So whenever we want to read a single character, so in a UI, if you want to read only single character, so then in that case you have to use a read method. So then anybody can ask you, what is the return type of that read, if by read we will read only single character. So its return type is integer, not character. Keep in mind that read the single character, but in a form of integer, because in the operating system there is no character. ABC is not a character for operating system. ABC is just a sky value, which is in the form of integer, right? So that's why it's read a single character but in a form of integer. Next is a read key. Read key is use is totally different as compared to read and read line. So read key is just a method that is totally used to read any kind of a key value in your keyboard. So that keyboard having a lots of key like a b c, numeric key or alphanumeric key or symbols, lots of key, space, lots of keys are there. So if you want to do some kind of a program where you want to read, anybody can enter a space bar or enter or a or function key, and you want to denote it that, okay, if anybody any user or any input we receive as a keystroke, I want to know which keystroke need to be pressed. So that kind of information if you want to display, so that read key will help you. Obvious, this is the method, and it's also having some return type. So what kind of a return type is there? It will its return type is console key information. always this provide this method will provide you a keyboard key information. So there is a structure in a C sharp that is called console key info. That console key info having all the key information of your keyboard. So this read key is basically used for that purpose only. So this is all about the syntax and keyword use in a simple hello world program. And using I'm trying to explain all those keyword. In a later video I will also explain in detail of all the type of access modifier and other parts of the C concept. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much.